Hearing none, we'll go on to unfinished business, the utility financial policy. That's the subcommittee that's made up of Jeff, Peter, and Steve. And is there any update there?
One real brief update, Steve Assenzi from the city of Kalamazoo, he's been looking into some of the financial parts of the policy. So, so basically we're still doing some research on that part of it. I think our next step is to get back with Peter, see if there's some specific questions, because I think what it relates to then is making sure that the financial policy is being communicated and interpreted correctly as we have the communications with the rate consultant. So, so right now it's looking at some of the research, see if there's some specific questions, and then we're gonna, next step would be to get with Stantec.
Any estimate on time on that? Would that perhaps come as a draft next meeting or?
I would say either, February now, yeah, either March or April.
Just one question on the minutes, actually. Very, very last page says we adjourned at 9 a.m. last time. I don't remember us having just a half an hour long meeting. That's great. Anyway,
When we had a recent meeting, it was either December or January, that was a half an hour. John's saying it was January.
Yeah.
Because we were debating whether to have it, is that? You know what, it actually, my recollection is the short meeting might have been when we were still sitting there, which would have been December.
this is January.
Yeah, so what,
It's good to verify that. Let's see the difference.
no, I think that would be an important point, and if that's incorrect, I think that would be a Scrivener's error that we change. I think you're correct, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Third way.
Yeah. Check the recording.
Project.
Okay. That's a good catch. The rate consultant contract renewal, so the subcommittee, that same subcommittee was going to look at that, and we'll also have conversation, I think, with James about the points in the contract. I think there were some other points we talked about, trying to clarify.
Right. We have not gotten together on the rate consultant contract. And I have an update on that. I apologize for that.
And then, and I think with that, for the contract, we have the renewal, the contract is through March, but I think there's 60 days for the renewal after that date. So we're still okay. It seems to me it's better to get it done sooner.
Right.
Any points that we might want to review? Capital improvements, this is in the works by the city. James has given us an update on that several times. I'm looking at probably May for action here, so possibly April discussion. Is there an update on the affordability program, how that is going?
It's up and running. We have, office hours in place to sign folks up with Community Action Agency. The next meeting locations and dates are, February 13th and February 27th, February 13th in City of Parchment, and February 27th in City of Portage. That's a walk-in. You can walk in and bring bring your stuff with you, get signed up for water affordability. You can call anytime, Community Action Agency, to get signed up as well. And, we've got, flyers, website information. Every bill that goes, to our customers includes the water affordability, statements and where to call and how to get resources, both in a front of the bill, in a text box, and then also on page 2 of the bill as well. And then every shut-off notice, every delinquent notice, every past due notice, those are additional communications that we send out to our customers. Those all include that as well too. So we are planning to reinstitute our water shut-off program. That's gonna be starting in March with the bills that were sent January, after January 1st. That would be due for shut off in March if no payment was received. So March starts kind of our shut off program. So, and we have 22 cycles, 22 billion cycles. So once we hit kind of that March timeframe, we'll be doing shut offs approximately every 2 weeks as we work through different cycles, and we're working through different customer bases. So that's something that's going to be coming forward here. I would imagine board members, staff, city commissioners, township supervisors, township board members are likely to get some contact from the public. We have not done shut-offs for 4 years now, so this is might be new for some folks. But those resources are there, and we've had a lot of effort to get that information out. We're also doing a marketing campaign. You'll hear advertisements on the radio that talk about water affordability in Kalamazoo. Again, everybody's eligible. All of the communities that we serve are eligible. Just contact Community Action Agency and get signed up.
Do you have the flyers for those electronically that you could send us?
I can send them to you, yep.
That would be awesome.
Yep.
That way we put it on our website too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Two things. Number one, you maybe mentioned it, or in terms of getting a communication out to the supervisors so that they're aware. And it's been in the news, and I think that there's been, but maybe a direct communication. This is happening. If people are calling, call yourself. Or just, how should they react?
Yeah, I can get something out.
And then the other thing is are there any numbers yet in terms of how many people are taking advantage?
I don't have numbers yet on who signed up. But yeah, we'll be able to get those and share those with the UPC.
And numbers of people in dollars?
Yes.
Just one other question. So relative to that, that would be interesting to have a comparison between number of shut-offs, the number of people that have responded to try to do something about it. We have 50 people calling and 500 potential shut-offs, just get a sense of what that looks like. And the other thing is, I know we talked about this a little bit because we've already heard about the city, the 60 days and then a $60 shut-off fee, which is something gets added to the bill. And there could be a little window here where some of those $60 fees have been charged or will be charged to people. And some of those might be forgiven depending on when that happened in the switchover. Is that?
Yeah, that's a good point, Mayor. Thanks for bringing that up. So there, previous years, we have a $60 fee. It's a service fee that covers the additional time that staff has to spend servicing the account, including, rolling the trucks to shut off that service. We started initiating that $60 fee under our previous policy once your bill was late. So once you're past that 30 days, that $60 fee kicked on. That was highlighted in our water affordability program as a recommendation that we should look at taking that fee back and only applying it when we're essentially rolling trucks. So when we've hit that, for us, that would be the 60-day mark. So we made that change effective January 1st. So everybody going forward won't see the $60 fee until we're at 60 days late, which means we've got you on the list for shut off. There was a billing group of customers that kind of got caught in that shuffle where it's after January 1st, but now they're getting hit with a $60 fee and it hasn't been 60 days. We were able to work with BSNA. We know who those customers are, and we did a mass reversal working with BSNA to get that taken out, and that's applied as a credit for their bills that they'll receive next quarter. So we didn't refund folks directly like a check in the mail, but that $60 has been applied to their as a credit to their next bill period. So that's been all cleaned up now, but there could still be some discussion about that with some customers. And again, going forward, $60 service fee is applied once your account status aging hits 60 days. And I'll detail all that in a communication probably to UPC, and then UPC can direct it to all the partner agencies and everything like that. Or we could go direct to the township supervisors. We'll work to figure out the best approach to get that out there.
Next is that, the water services agreement review, and I don't think we have anything different on that. Peter, I don't know at this time, do you? Or
No
anyone?
comment. Mhm.
Next item is new business, the high pressure areas, and this is an update, and I don't know if James or giving me-
Like James and Tom, I know Tom's been helping us out with this one.
So the issue is, areas of high pressure in the system, pressure reducing valves. And, resident asked
Which is this gizmo.
why they should be responsible to repair, operate, maintain pressure valves. It's required under the plumbing code if you're over 80.
80.
So it should be getting put in as part of the House bill. The question is why should I have to maintain this thing if the city can't maintain the system, can't maintain the pressures within AWWA standards. So that's what started the conversation.
Yep.
I'm passing it off to you.
Yep. Well, thanks for the introduction. So I'll start off with kind of that concept of why can't the city lower their pressures or maintain their pressures? And that has to deal with the topography and the terrain features of the pressure districts that we serve. So this concept is essentially why we have 11 different pressure districts. So if you look at a cross section of the Kalamazoo region, we've got kind of in the center, which is like downtown Kalamazoo. It's the lowest point. It's like a bowl. It's got the same elevation essentially as the river. And then as you go out from the center of the city, whether you go north, east, or west, you're going to go upwards in elevation. And so as you're working up in elevation, we're moving those pressure districts up in accordance with that. So when we have, say, like low, intermediate, east side high, high, super high, ultra high, what we're talking about is that pressure district from an elevation standpoint, not necessarily what the static pressure is. So that's what we've done to kind of bracket the topography and build the system out. Still within certain areas, in this area, what we're looking at is Texas Township. We've got a map in your packets that kind of show a snippet of Texas Township. And you see that the little dots represent homes where the system pressure, that's the city pressure, is above 80 PSI. And the question that was asked is, well, why can't the city lower that? And the answer is if we lower that there, then we're not going to meet the pressure needs in other areas of the community. So in this area of Texas Township, we've got some undulating terrain, and you may have where we've got just enough pressure to serve your neighbor, or there's too much pressure to serve you. And so in those cases where the system needs to operate at a higher pressure, but the homes, obviously, we don't want them above 80 PSI. Plumbing code requires a pressure reducing valve, and that's what this device is. When we go to set a meter on a new build home, one of the first things we do is check the system pressure. If we're over 80 PSI, we red tag it. So we red tag the installation, and we say requires plumber, requires backflow, or excuse me, pressure reducer valve. So this is something that the plumbing code requires. All new homes built would have this if the system pressure is above 80 PSI. Now, we have gone in and changed pressure district boundaries. We've done that many times in Oshtemo over the years. Back when portions of Oshtemo were originally served by the old beach ground storage tank, and then were served with pressure pumps to achieve their pressure. And then ultimately in 2007, when that new beach tower was constructed, pressure is actually lowered in Oshtemo, but fire flow was increased. We have an area in Comstock where we've switched the entire neighborhood from our low pressure up to East Side High. And when we did that, we're going through and installing these in the homes, because in those cases, the homes already existed. Everything was already operating under system pressure at the time, and then we went and changed things. So it's a little bit of a confusing item because it is required by plumbing code. The system, the city's not gonna lower the pressure out in Texas, because if we do so, then we're not be able to achieve pressure elsewhere, and would not be able to achieve fire flow elsewhere. So that's some of the challenge and some of the undulating terrain. You could do this. We could spend millions of dollars and create new transmission district around here with PRV, pressure reducing stations in the ground structures, and we could achieve that. So that is, I'm not saying the engineering's not there. We could do that. We could have 12 pressure districts, and we could come up here to this area, surround that in transmission main, put another pressure reducing station, have 13 pressure reducing stations. We could continue to do this, and we could have probably 20 some pressure districts, and would make our system much more complex. Or homes could file plumbing code and sell this. So there is some homeowner responsibility in it. That being said, we want to work with our customers. We want to work with folks in a positive way. If they're experiencing, everything was okay and then now it's not, it's not a big deal for us to go and put these in with our licensed plumber and properly adjust this to make sure that it's serving. This does adjust, and if it's adjusted improperly, you're going to have a bad experience inside the home. So this is one of those items where it's not so clear cut of it's not our problem, but it's a homeowner's problem, and vice versa. I think there's certainly situations like we talked about new build where that's got to be, the plumber's got to put that in. But there's also situations where we could come in from a customer satisfaction perspective and replace or adjust that to make sure it's working. While we're talking about that, we also have two other scenarios that are kind of in that same aspect where this is a customer valve. This is put in by the plumber on the customer side of the meter, but oftentimes these may leak or fail. We now stock these, and we will respond to a customer concern with a leak in the basement where at the meter, and we'll replace this at the meter. One of the things that we will do when we install devices, valves, things of that nature, these would be made in America, compliant with Build America, Buy American. And this is NSF certified, lead-free. So this is not a cheap valve. This is not something you're going to get off the shelf in Menards. We get this from plumbing supply warehouses. This is designed to last for 50 years and it's totally compliant with everything, we do. A lot of times we've gone out with customer leaks where the customer valve was leaking from the threads where the part, threads in and the threads were caught improperly. And it was found it was a Chinese valve, Chinese manufacturer, and improperly cut threads. So, you know, we are seeing that there is a difference between Buy American and Buy America certified products, NSF certified products, and cheap Chinese parts that are, you know, thrown together. Another item that we have here is a backflow prevention device. So this is kind of this would go right on our meter, and we would put this in areas that's got like a little check valve that prevents water from going back. So we do have some customers in Richland Township. We've got a few in Cooper. We'll likely have a few in Ross when we get to Ross, where the customer has irrigation for, say, like their lawn, but maybe a little bit more intense than what we see like at a city lot. They've got their own pump well, and they want to maintain that and still be on city water. And we do have a pump well retention policy that's in our 2022 water quality report that kind of details what's required. It has to be in a separate structure, can't be in the basement, has to be isolated, separate plumbing systems. But we do put this on the meter just to make sure that in the future, if somebody were to inadvertently cross some pipes in the basement and maybe think we're doing the right thing, this is going to protect the system to make sure we don't get any private well water that comes back into the system. So these are three kind of unique scenarios where these are things in the basement that are right there at the meter. And it's not that we do it everywhere for everybody, but if there is a demonstrated need or a customer concern, that's stuff that we stock, and we're happy to do that for the customers.
Very clear explanation, that's helpful.
So the policy is to address them, not to have the policy is not to have a program to run around and chase all these down, but the policy is to address individual issues as they.
Correct. So if we get a call, I'll use the customer valve for an example. If we get a call from a customer that says, hey, you know, there's a leak at the meter in my basement, and we respond and the customer valve is the issue, we're going to respond and replace the customer valve. We're not going to go inspect everybody's home and determine if they have a new Buy American, NSF certified lead-free customer valve. There's a lot of installations that don't have a customer valve. Some of our legacy installations, they just have a meter and a stopcock on the meter itself. So this is something that's relatively new, probably within the last 20 years or so for installations. But they are on our new installations going in.
Well, referring back to last month when you were talking about the cooperative agreement with like MSU for meters on campus, would it be expected of MSU that they're obligated and responsible for the service valves when they swap out the meters, or is it something that should be considered as part of the actual meter itself and cost?
So on new meter installations or CMOs, yeah, if there isn't one there, this will go in. So they will be for like at Western when we go do the meter installs, if that install will include a customer valve as well.
So that may transition into Richland as well.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, so when you guys are gonna do the mass meter install, there's probably gonna be, you'll find a lot that don't have the customer valve. So you'll have, this is 1 inch, customer piping is probably 3/4. So there's gonna be a 3/4 to 1 inch, you know, sweat fitting. And then there'll be a sweat to threaded fitting to get onto here. And then you'll have this. The other advantage of this innocuous valve is that future CMOs, this actually helps us out. When we do a future CMO, which is change meter out, it's not the department that the city manager comes from. So this actually helps us if we can go in the basement, shut 2 valves, pull and exchange a meter. It's a lot easier, a lot cleaner, and a lot faster than getting a 5-gallon bucket, trying to get the customer to, drain all the lines and getting a hose line and filling a 5-gallon bucket and hauling the water out and back in. And this can pay for itself with one CMO, and just to help us, move along in the future.
So, and this, I became aware of this because Texas reached out and was looking for this group to have a discussion about the policy because of some of their residents reaching out to their board members. So, two questions. With the city doing it on I don't know, on call, if you will, or something.
Yeah, as needed.
As
correct,
needed.
Yeah,
Response.
Response-based.
response-based.
What does that, how does that affect the liability? I mean, because that's one of the questions from this Texas Township person is, okay, they came and they replaced the valve and they're gonna do this, but I have all this damage. So by doing it for some and not others, what's the system's liability? It seems like whatever we're doing, it needs to be in writing
So-
going forward.
From a, liability standpoint, as a public water supply, we would recommend all claims against the city to be filed through the city attorney's office, and processed accordingly. So I'm not gonna attempt to make a claim of responsibility, on that aspect. I will continue to reiterate that these devices are required by plumbing code at any location where the system pressure exceeds 80 PSI. And you may have one of these in your basement, and if that fails, that's a failure of a device that's required by plumbing code. And so, yeah, we can get back into that, perhaps a signed release. I know that city attorneys do that kind of stuff before, to say, if we go in and we replace that, perhaps we'll have the customer do a signed release, in acknowledging that we're gonna do some work.
Maybe a written policy that clarifies where the responsibility lies in the plumbing code as a home fixture. And that the city response-based will install, but clarify that that's really, city doesn't have to do it.
You can be doing it at all.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact situations in Texas Township, but were they situations where people did not have the device and then there was some damage in their house and now they're looking for the system to correct it, or was it, so there could be different scenarios.
Tom, or
I don't recall.
I don't recall if it was
specifics of this. It's something, the pressure got through. It might have been either incorrectly adjusted or a failed valve. Pressure got through and did some damage to plumbing downstream.
it was several $1,000s. They happened to be gone for a couple months.
James, when we were talking earlier, didn't you say you actually hire a plumbing contractor to do those replacements?
Correct. So this device, to install and probably adjust this device is outside the scope of what we carry as licenses. So this requires a plumber, and we have licensed plumbers that do this work. They're not city employees, but they're part of our contract. And we've had areas where we've changed those pressure boundaries. And so that we've gone in and done this work so that we can ensure that the home, continues to comply with plumbing code.
So that may help clarify the liability issue as well.
So, and from my experience, in a lot of business, this is not particular to the city's system. It is, the systems all throughout the country have to, or if there's any elevation at all throughout their system, have to deal with this. So this is not unusual. As a matter of fact, Libby, when we were talking about the
We installed one.
the only one in Seattle.
Yeah, I would say, also, damage to private property is not a new thing, you know, for within public services that we, whether you're looking at the sewer, side of the work we do or the water side of the work we do, there has been claims against the city, and we've worked with the city attorney's office to determine, you know, what the outcomes would be. So, I understand that there was, you know, home damage in a home. Certainly respect that. Certainly, you know, that's not something that, we'd like to see happen, but that doesn't mean that that happened just because of that happens. Those things happen in water systems that serve 196,000 people. They happen in sewer systems. They happen, even with our snowplows. We had, you know, some incidents where a snowplow was backing up a street and, you know, accidents do occur. So, it just, we want to make sure, just to discuss, it's not necessarily just because of this, you know, their risk, and calamities are always going to be there.
So, to capture some of this in writing, I'm not sure who does that, if it's city attorney
We
or,
probably will work with, Bill Bates.
okay.
To kind of get through this, and
And
probably
then,
work with Tom too and some assistants, and still address it. We're still working with Texas Township. I think we have something like 6 folks that have made they have came out to say they've had an issue. We've looked at from like how many dots we have in the map. I think what we're struggling with, just because there's a dot in the map here doesn't mean that customer needs this. The customer might have this and this works fine. So how do we identify where there's a red dot? Is this there and is this working? There are some things we could do. We could go to the outside hose bibs and get a pressure reading. Certainly that would require a lot of communication with these neighborhoods and with Texas Township. We just don't want city workers to be running through yards, turning on outside faucets. That could certainly upset folks, but there are ways for us to determine if this is there working. We just got to work together, work with the township, you know, to make sure we properly quantify this need and be responsive. So I think we have 6, I believe. We don't know if that's it. We don't know if there's others. So I think we're going to continue to try to narrow that down.
once it's in writing, is it something that could be mailed out to those districts? Or there's potential to have the
Yeah.
FYI, this is your responsibility, this is what to watch for or something.
Yeah, then the plumbers already, so the townships that work with, you know, they have plumbing inspectors, or, you know, city, we have a plumbing inspector. If you can talk to your plumbing inspector, this is all known knowledge. You know, the plumbing inspectors are very well aware of this. They know that these devices are required. They know, you know, why the system has the pressure that it has. So, I think, their resources are there. There is some understanding there within the trades professionals that do the work.
And then we talked a lot about the ERVs. What about the other ones? Is that also on an response?
So these are, yeah, if we get a customer that calls about a leak at the, you know, essentially it would present or come in as leak at the meter, leak in basement, requesting a response for 311. This is already something that we do. And these items will all appear in our next publication of City Kalamazoo's construction specifications. So it's kind of like that's our spec book. That's essentially kind of what drives policy and what drives our crew response is by that spec book. So these items will all appear in that next publication, which is, I believe, 24 this year. It's going to come out with a new one.
And what was the third one?
This one.
Oh, yeah, and that one you do
Backflow.
whenever in those circuits.
In the well retention policy, and this is called out in the well retention policy.
So are these all 3 things that are part of the plumbing code, but the city's doing, is that all three of them?
I think there's, I'll set the backflow prevention device separate from plumbing code, because I'm not sure if that's in there or not. I'm just, it may be, I'm not aware. This valve, would be just part of any part of the plumbing code with your fixtures and valves and things like that. But it's also part of the work we do, so we touch at this point. And then this is clearly in plumbing code.
You raised the question of should the city be doing it, and, I just did a quick, when I heard from Texas, I did a quick online, and I think some places have a policy, they don't do it, and some have a policy, they do it, and cities is on a response. And it seems to me that's driven by, it's cheaper than doing $1 million pressure reduction station.
Right. And I think there's certainly many ways to look at that. I think for us, a lot of what got us talking with our engineers and our managers within distribution on these topics, kind of all these topics in the box, is that we've got a regional system. It's pretty large from an aerial standpoint in terms of, if you're driving from Texas Township to Augusta, and I know we don't serve Augusta with water, but there's a sewer lift station there. I'm just, broadly speaking, we work, water, wastewater do work together within our department. And a lot of times we don't know everything. We don't have a camera on scene when we get that call from 311. The information is sometimes wrong, it's sometimes spotty, but it's urgent and the customer needs help now. And so we'll make the commitment to go there, and maybe that commitment's us driving from Comstock to Texas with a truck with 2 FTE. When we get there and we get in the basement, and then for us to have this in a home and get there, so the customer has a leak, their shirt's the city, they call the city, it goes to 311, it gets dispatched to us, the crew's in Comstock, the crew drives to Texas, we go in the basement and we say, yes, ma'am, that is your problem. We'll see you later. Bye. That is a bad news day for that customer. That's a bad news day for us. It just spent 2 hours of staff time. I don't know how many gallons of gas, and lost time for that crew could have been somewhere else. And it would have been easier on everybody if we would have just fixed it. And I think that customer service aspect is really what's driving us on all these items. I think if we were perhaps a smaller utility, we didn't have the sunken cost into the transportation and crew time of when we have to remobilize and go to different areas. And if we were perhaps maybe even in customer homes more often, then maybe some of these would be a no. And I think there are a lot of homes, we still have meter installations that are 40 or 45 years old that we have not been in that house for 45 years. And something breaks. And that's our responsibility. Maybe it's not, but we've committed those resources to go there. So a lot of the times, just these devices are essentially cheaper than telling the customer no and then dealing with the fallout that comes after that and the sunken cost of our response time.
Sounds like the judgment call.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree about that. So basically, just one or two things though, Seth. There always was this message I got, over the years, everything that side meter is yours. Your part, right?
Yeah.
So if we're kind of crossing that boundary and we're installing things, are we somehow now assuming more responsibility by doing that? I mean, we're working on
Right.
your plumbing.
Right.
That's not our plumbing, it's your plumbing we're working on. So I just didn't know what that means in terms of liability.
No, I think that's a great point. I think that goes to Libby's earlier point, is that we want to make sure we're drawing a clear boundary. So this we have in our spec, we draw the line on the backside of this. So we show this in our spec of, customer meter, or customer valve, meter, city valve, but it's all in our responsibility. We show that in the drawing, we show that in the spec. To both points, I think, it's our intent to put this right at the right at the meter so that it's right at these locations. And then call that out. I think having that written policy to be able to show that. One of the things that we've done, I'm switching gears here, I'm gonna talk about sewer real quick, but I'm gonna make a connection to it. We did a complete rewrite of our chapter 28 sewer use ordinance. And we took all of our existing policy documents that were, kind of filling the closets in the department of, what is out there. We brought that all out, we put it on the table, and that stuff is all now included in the ordinance. So there is no better policy than ordinance, because we know ordinance is ultimately what we're responsible for. I know we didn't come here today to talk about the water ordinance, chapter 38, but chapter 38 is something we should probably put on our radar. It is somewhat piecemealed together over the years. It is definitely due for a rewrite, and perhaps over the next 2 to 3 years, as we wrestle with some of these policy issues that come up, should we be doing this? If the answer is yes, let's have a policy about it. And I think in time, we can, we've got a great opportunity here that we can work together to kind of, shake out some of, what these policy issues are, or what some of the challenges perhaps township or city officials have had with, customer service, or items that, why do you guys do that? Or why don't you guys do that? We can deal with that, and then ultimately move to update chapter 38 and get the best policy in the world in ordinance.
So I will use these minutes and write a response back to Texas, and probably run that by you as well.
Okay, yeah, great.
Any other questions or?
You want it now or you want to have it?
Later, we'll,
Pardon?
how about later?
That's fine.
Professional services. That time of year for annual letters of engagement, and I believe the city requested and has received all of them from the professionals who sit on this committee.
Yeah, I believe we've got, I know I just saw Peter's yesterday. I believe we've got everything. So yeah, we're just looking for that new proposal, and then we'll get that work. We'll get it for 2024.
I think all three were in the packet.
They're all,
Yeah.
they were in the packet, they got me well.
Okay, so that's just it. The housekeeping, yeah.
I just have a question about it. Just one little side thing, which shouldn't happen, but each one, of course, says we got the policy about buildings not exceeding 25,000. So I just wonder who's paying attention to that. I'm assuming that won't happen, but we just approve them. We see one and we approve it. We happen to have one today that were that to be, which is just for 1 month. But if that was multiplied times 12, that would be over the $25,000 limit. It's just 1 month's worth of billing on one of our invoices. So I'm just wondering, for our own benefit,
Yes. Can we get a printout of?
So, yeah, that's-
For 23?
That's a great point. I think certainly it's within our capabilities to provide like a supplemental document that shows the amount spent to date. So it would say like 25,000, 1,000 spent, 24,000 remaining.
Yeah.
I believe we can get those coming on a monthly basis so that you can see them and you can kind of track the burn rate, if you will, on what's going on.
That sounds good, or quarterly, whatever. Actually, monthly might be easier just to remember.
There's one other question here. We don't have a time frame in here. I see we've gotten a bill from October for one. I can't remember what the other invoices were time frame wise. So do we have, is there any end date? We're not going to approve bills anymore. I mean, do we have to get them with a certain period of time? 90 days or something of the time served, or whatever. I just don't.
That's a
It's like
good.
evergreen kind of a thing.
Steve is on there. Usually management services, we want to make sure we pay all outstanding invoices. And so sometimes we do get a late invoice from October or something like that. I know we're still we're still paying, right now it is February, but we are still paying 2023 invoices. And so that's not out of the ordinary,
Right.
but it is, we want to kind of, get that worked through at this point.
Now, if I put a letter, what are we gonna do about it? Or just say something like invoices must be received within whatever, 90 days of, you know, services provided or something like that?
I think 90 is probably generous. isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But
Is this I mean, we know all the members sitting here, so we
Yes.
can make that request that we receive the invoices within 90 days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so happens that the timing for me is you get it within a half a day. Just the timing, so I was like, make sure you send it to Monday.
So we don't need to take any action on those letters of engagement?
No, I don't think so. I think that's with the city.
Yeah, and so just,
Okay.
we intend to issue purchase orders, we'll, file requisitions, which is a request for a purchase order, with management services, and then, as that's processed, management services will issue new purchase orders to each one of those, professionals, and so, you should see that, kind of working its way through, here.
Make sure you communicate that to us so that we can, because you like to have the PO on the bill. on the
Correct, yeah.
invoice, So that you can tie that out.
So, yeah, that's correct.
So just let us know when that changes.
Okay.
And then invoice approvals. Questions on those, or those are for action today?
No, this task seems to fall to me. I'm happy to do it, I guess. So I move approval of payment for invoice number 6163 from Bredevelt Hafner LLC in amount of $611.70.
Motion by Mayor Anderson, second by Member Weef to approve redeveloped Hafner invoice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, is it
6-0.
6-0, and, one is remote and non-voting.
Move approval, I apologize, it's wrong. Marsh Place, is that right? Invoice number 150151 in the amount of $462.50. Move approval and payment. Support.
Same motion by Mayor Anderson, second by Member Wheat to approve the Marsh invoice as described. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0 and one, remote non-voting.
Move approval of Cronin Newhoff invoice number 79594 in the amount of $834.30.
I'll support.
Motion by Mayor Anderson, second by Member Crum. To approve the Cronin Newhoff invoice as described. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries 5-0, 1 abstention. And one is, remote non-voting. Thank you. Item 8, committee member alternate guest comments. So we'll start by those here today. Any comments? Lucian?
I do have a question on the backflow equipment that's available for homeowners. Is the county aware of that? Because many of our, Richland Township residents wanted to maintain their well for irrigation purposes. And obviously the water was expanded to address the PFAS issues, and the county was not allowing the residents to maintain their wells, for irrigation purposes, and they were, being forced to abandon their wells. So with this new backflow, will there be an option for those residents to maintain their well?
So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a good question. So there are some areas where the county order supersedes our ability to allow it. So there, some areas where the county said, yeah, that's okay. Those results are low enough that, we're able to keep the well for irrigation. And so it's really, I should have led with that. I left that portion out, but whether a well stays or not the county is part of that decision. Because of cases in contamination, the county has the ultimate authority to say that the well can't be there.
But are they aware of this backflow?
Yeah, no, they're,
They are.
they're aware, Lucas and then his staff know, that this is part of that. And, it's part of that installation. So there was one, I believe in Cooper, Jeff, it might be Parchment. It's in one of those areas that,
I think it was Cooper.
that the gentleman wanted to keep the well. And we worked with the county, and so it was an area that wasn't, readily contaminated, and so we were able to keep it. And this device did go in at the meter to protect the system.
Okay, so from the county's perspective, they've been concerned obviously with irrigating lawns with PFAS contaminated water.
Yeah.
And so that has been a concern. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. And the second comment that I have is just to recognize that the city is going above and beyond with trying to provide customer service, because most homeowners don't understand whether it's their problem or a city problem. All they know is that they have a problem and they need it taken care of. So I would like to thank the city for going above and beyond to trying to help the customers resolve their issues. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucian. And in Oshtemo, they had the same situation where wells were not allowed to be kept. And it also falls to Eagle, the county working through Eagle. There was a request to Eagle and they denied the request for a different contaminant.
Ditto.
Okay.
Thank you very much. No, good meeting. It's really enjoyable to sit here and watch everybody work together. Thank you.
Just have a couple questions for James. Seemed to be your show today, James. Did a good job explaining it. I'm just wondering which side of the valve does the pressure reduction go on?
We put it after the meter, so the pressure reduction does have a flow orientation.
After,
We
it's in
put
the
it after the
homeowner
meter.
side, but you said
Right,
you're responsible.
Yeah,
And then the shut off after that on the homeowner side, or the shut off?
usually the customer valve would be before the backflow
Oh.
preventer. There, and there is some pressure reduction that happens through the meter. So that for this to perform the best, we want to make sure that we're beyond all the pressure
Catching it right where it
reductions.
needs to be.
And then this can be, adjusted properly.
Makes sense. And I just want to mention too, you mentioned that the shut off cost to the customer would be $60. Do they then have a turn on cost when they settle up?
So when they settle up, they've likely lost their security deposit. Their security deposit is $100. So if they've essentially exhausted everything, they're at a shut off status and everything is still outstanding, they're gonna have their payment for their bill payment, whatever that amount is. They're gonna have the $60 fee, then they're gonna have the $100 deposit. Now, the $100 deposit is required, but it will go on as showing, a positive $100 on the account. So, that is a good point, that there's gonna be probably most customers it's gonna be $160 on top of what their arrears to get turned back on.
And I just want to comment too, that well, I've been a critic sometime of how the city's performed. I also, in this, even before your time, I've seen the city, at least in the township in my years, go above and beyond on a lot of projects. I really have. But it's something you don't want to go out and announce and all that either too. But I've seen the crews do it and I appreciate it. So in both ways, both in the past and what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate it. I think the criticism is needed and helpful, and it helps us to do better and even recognize some areas where we have blind spots. I mean, if we don't talk about it, it doesn't get talked
Yeah.
about. So let's highlight it, let's talk about it, and let's find
I just
solutions.
want to think I'm all critical now. You guys have done a great job. A lot of things.
Dan? Any other comment?
I'd like to second, the other end of the road and just say, I really appreciate the city's empathy and reaching out to individuals that have, cost issues and also going into the home and being able to meet them where they're at. I think it's fantastic. And I really enjoy your plumbing presentation. It helps me learn a lot what goes on. So thank you. I appreciate it. And I want to recognize you for that. Thank you.
Jerry? Yep.
Good question. James, that 80-pound pressure, is that gonna be at the hydrants in Texas Township? Is that what they're gonna?
So the 80,
Being an ex-fireman.
yeah, the
80 pounds of
80,
pressure.
80 PSI, above 80 PSI, is, you know, what's at the hydrants. Yeah, so, we've got hydrant, we just did the ISO for Texas.
I mean, my next question, when they do in Texas, do they give it to you then and you can see the different areas and what you're getting, the readings? And
Yeah, we go out and do all those tests. So we've got the ISO, in Texas, and then we also work with Pine and Newhoff. We've got a very sophisticated model that shows the pressure in the pipeline. We can see it, we can see the pressure at any point in the pipeline, based on the model. And we verified the model. We continue to make the model better. Every time we go out, we do a pressure test on hydrants, hydrant flow test, with the ISO report. So we can continue to make that system better, with that. But yeah, we've got all those reports as well.
Last week, Miss Dig raised their rates. To me, they did 40% increase in 1 year. Do you expect that to happen to the city, that amount? And do you run Miss Dig half through the water budget and half through the sewer? Or do you put it all in?
Yeah, so no, that's a good question about Mystig. So Mystig it's a requirement of utilities, so we're required, we've got pipes in the ground, we're required to participate in the Mystig system. We have internal staff that go out and do those utility locating. We have a records manager that kind of manages that group, and that group's also supported by our draftsmen and our GS technicians that kind of all come together to create our Mystig response within public services. We pay last year about $25,000 to Mystig, and I would expect, yeah, that number's probably gonna continue to go up. That's a check we write and it goes to Mystig that pays for things on their end. We're considered a member community because we've got, all the pipes in the ground. Our Mystig costs, so that $25,000, and then I believe we have something like 8 FTE that are a part of that. So we've got ballpark, about $800,000 of cost of the Mystig system, plus all the supplies, vehicles, everything else, probably easily $1 million of cost in Mystig that we carry across the two utilities. They're the biggest. Water and wastewater are probably the biggest users of that Mystig system. But we also have our what we call Act 51, 202, and 203 major local streets departments pay into that as well, because we also go out and we Mystig all the electric lines that run to the lights for traffic signals. So we Mystig all that as well. We also have general fund dollars comes into our Mystig program because we also Mystig the storm sewer lines. And then we partner with, we provide Mystig for the road commission as well through the signals. So we've got an agreement with the road commission where we're performing Mystig services for the road commission for signals. the traffic signals that are out there
Within the city,
within the county.
within your network of,
Right, so we do all the city, well, we've got an agreement with the road commission to do the signals in the county as well.
Concern I had is a per customer basis, and that's not worked out totally, but the best way to rent. I'm paying like, each customer is paying $20 a year for that service. In the city of Kalamazoo, your customer is paying less than 50 cents per customer.
Well, if you look at just that $25,000 divided about, all the customers.
Yeah.
But we've got probably about $1 million of cost that would be divided across all the customers.
And the small one, it just kills us.
Yeah, I think the same is probably true for BSNA. The charges that smaller communities pay for BSNA are very similar to the charges we pay for BSNA. And smaller communities have less customers to spread that out across. So, yeah, it continues to be a challenge, I think, for smaller communities or smaller systems when you've got costs that are not appropriate in terms of your size. But those are some real challenges.
Thank you. And I didn't hear, you do split that cost between your two budgets then?
No, well, we, more than two. So water, wastewater, streets, general fund, and the county. So we split it across 5 different funds, at least. I might have left one out.
Thank you.
Anyone online wanting to comment?
I'm all set.
All set, I think they said. Okay. Anything?
Only comment is that the 160 may not seem like a lot of money, but if you run the numbers in terms of sending the crew up there twice, truck, equipment, administrative time, probably cheap, in terms of not that the customer's getting a good deal, but you could charge more.
Water's back on.
Yeah, water's back. Okay. You don't wanna punish them too bad, but I think that's probably $60 is an appropriate cost to.
John?
I'm good, thanks. Nothing else.
Don't have anything as well, and then our next meeting is March 14th. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Adjourned at 9:34, man. I'm not gonna write that down. I wrote you, check my notes on the last one.